All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing. Hope everything is going great for everyone this week. More news dropping. Crazy week. More news dropping across the entire fishing community. It's that time of year, right? End of the season wrapping up. People getting ready for next year. Remember, pro staffers, October is really it. You got maybe 3-4 weeks left to get those pro staff deals, sponsorships, all of that locked up, because most of these companies are doing it in Q4 for next year. So you want to make sure you lock that up if you intend or you want to explore new pro staff opportunities. And I will say this: do not sleep. Do not sleep on your custom bait maker community. Okay, do not sleep on those guys. Those guys are still, an awesome avenue to pursue, as opposed to, the major brands. If you're just doing if you're doing promo staff, especially if you throw their baits or you're interested in throwing their baits and all that, and you got a good social media presence and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube like this, all of that stuff. So don't sleep on that. So we're going to talk tonight MLF, Major League Fishing, making some changes. Kind of saw this coming. I think everyone's kind of saw this coming, really, with kind of the evolution post FLW, right? And it's kind of on the one hand, you kind of have to understand it. And on the other hand, I know there's a lot of angst and there's a lot of people disappointed. But you kind of can't have both, right? I mean, you can't have higher payouts and lower entry fees, right? And and it's kind of there's a give and take in all of this, especially with the economy. They're forward looking. You have to remember that. Kind of taking in what everyone is saying all around, not only just anglers, but also sponsors, and just looking at the big picture of everything that's happening. So, more or less, the MLF is basically eliminated the old pro circuit, tour. That really was a carryover from the FLW days. And so in eliminating that, they're also eliminating the title. They're also eliminating the championship for that. And that, so a lot of people have been fishing probably MLF for a long time, or if you're almost an old timer like me, that's seen it kind of bend the whole way from the old days, from FLW, that fished FLW, and then MLF, and kind of saw that, been through that whole transition, no cut, force wood, then all this has kind of been writing on the wall that this was probably going to happen, that it's the death nail for everything remaining from FLW. And fans I think fans probably recognize that. Obviously, the anglers recognize that when they've got a plan out for 2023. So MLF eliminates the Pro Circuit Tour and initiates the MLF Invitationals. Okay, so interesting, because that word invitational, I did a previous video on why I thought there needed to be a National Kayak Invitational Tournament, because you're invited to participate. You're not just cutting a check and showing up. That's what the other series are for, at the lower level, right? That's what those are for. Cut your teeth, prove yourself, move yourself up. And so, although the murky part about it is kind of pathways now get kind of skewed. Like, what really is the pathway to BPT, right? Like, what really is the pathway now? So if you win an invitational event, you qualify for Redcrest, for sure, which is an awesome event, but you know what? It's kind of makes you wonder, what the structure is really going to be, and Bass is going through this stuff too. How do you, now you've got to fish 9 Bass Open events in order to qualify to be able to get an invitation to the elites. Okay, so which is a change, right? You should be able to fish the 3 in your division, and they would take the, winners of the divisions and all that, and kind of, some people get in, some people get dropped, that kind of deal, for Bass. And so without the Pro Circuit Tour and replacing with the Invitationals, what they're also doing, what they're really doing is reducing. So the criticism is they're not growing anymore. They're consolidating and reducing. And what I mean by that is they're actually lowering the entry fees for the MLF Invitational for those that are eligible to participate. Now, who are those people? They will be the top 75 from the current 2022 Pro Circuit Tour. Okay, so those top 75 from that automatically in the MLF Invitationals. Okay, then you have your top 5. I think it ends up being 30 anglers. So top 5 from your Toyota division. Okay, so you end up somewhere around like 120, around there of anglers, and then you've got your BPT tours professionals that are allowed to participate in the Pro Circuit, the MLF Invitational, which then kind of like, probably like it's a lot of people on the outside looking in that aren't going to be able to be in that, working their way up from BFLs and Toyota divisions. Obviously, no tackle warehouse there's no tackle warehouse Pro Circuit anymore. So like that's the next step. They're on the outside looking in as the guys that are already made it all the way to the Pro Tour, get to come, more or less come down and fish these invitationals. So there's always that kind of dynamic that some people like that, some people hate that. From a business perspective, it makes sense, I guess, for MLF to attract eyeballs, to get everybody. Remember, they're also reducing it from a 4-day event structure like Tackle Warehouse to a 3-day event structure, and they're capping the number of anglers at 150. Now, those 150 anglers will fish the first 2 days of every event, and then the field will be cut to 50. Okay, as opposed to 3-day event. I think it ended on the 4th day event was 10, right? So that's a change. So you're one less day of fishing. Okay, so you're fishing 3 days, potentially 3 days instead of 4. So that's, kind of reduced. 6 events. Okay. Now, the other thing that's interesting is your entry fee for each event now has been reduced from $5,833 to $5,000. So $30,000 costs you, as an angler, just in entry fees is going to cost you $30,000 from MLF in 2023 for the MLF Invitational. That's it. Okay, like $30,000, but the impact of that and the impact of 150 anglers impacts the payout now. You've reduced the entry fees. So what used to pay out $100,000 per event, I think, in Tackle Warehouse, is now reduced to about $80,000. And when you look at that, I think if you get into the top 30 on the final day of the 50, you're guaranteed $10,000, I think. And if you're 31 through 50, you're guaranteed $8,000. I think that's what it is, which is less than what it was. It shrunk the payout number of anglers, as before it paid out for less money, but paid out further down the number of anglers entered into a Tackle Warehouse event. So that's kind of like the changes of where they're at. So each event is going to be paying out less. It's going to be bringing in less revenue because the angler fees are less, and it's going to be paying out less. Okay, and so that's how that happens. That's the dynamic. And so on the one hand, they're listening to the side of anglers that are concerned about inflation, concerned about the economy, have been concerned about gas prices this whole season, really, because of inflation, that they've reduced the entry fee. So that's a positive. But the negative to that positive is, they're taking in less, so they've got to pay out less. So they've got to change their payout structure. I think most people are probably, I think most people get that. I think most people are upset, that there's no championship. I mean, if you won the Tackle Warehouse Championship, like that's a big feather, in your cap for any angler to win a championship. There's no title and there's no championship. So what you have is you're going to have I believe, you're going to have every angler who wins the 6 events. Okay. So potentially 6 different winners. Let's just say that. Those 6 plus an AOI winner of the MLF Invitationals gain entry into the BPT. That's how I read it. I could be wrong, but that is really how I read it. And obviously things can be tweaked here because it's September. Things may change. The all 3 days of all of the 6 events in the MLF Invitational will be live streamed. Okay. Some I think will also be carried. I think it's CBS. Actually, I don't know if that's all of them. That may just be the BPT tour. They've got a deal I think in place with CBS for 2023 for MLF. So that's kind of how that really is shaking out so far. At least what I got on a call today. That's kind of like what I was, kind of like taking a bunch of notes, trying to figure that out. The events, it appears, for us here in the Mid-Atlantic, it appears that we got 1, okay? So of the 6, we got 1, and it's the Potomac River, okay? No surprise there. I can tell you, I was politicking. I know other people were politicking for the James River, but it seems like the James River may come into play on another series event, potentially, because the James River's been on fire the last really 2 years in terms of catch rates. Doesn't matter doesn't matter what tour it is, what organization it is. It's been on fire more than the Potomac, in my opinion. I grew up, before moving, I moved to Richmond. I talk about it a lot. Richmond used to host the Bassmaster Classic in the 80s when I was a kid. I mean, that fishery went through some great to bad times and has been coming back for years now. And people are just stuck in that mindset of sending these events to the same fisheries because they have relationships with the people in those towns and those cities. And there's money on the line. And so that's what it really boils down to. Is those relationships. Why do they go? Why does Bass go to the same places? Why is MLF going to the same places historically? Because they have it. They know what they're going to get there, right? They know the turnout. They know the anglers. All the anglers have fished there. All the anglers have, you know what I mean? It's like there's a history as opposed to going to someplace new or new-ish and something goes wrong, be interesting. But again, no West Coast, right? No West Coast. So, that's a product of inflation, I think. A product of people having to take boats all the way across the country. That's really what it is. So you basically have Potomac in there for us, which is great. And then if I remember this correctly, Okeechobee is on that list. Eufaula, okay? Again, everyone seems to be, again, that's not new to anybody, right? Trying to think. Oh, Mississippi River. So you got Potomac River, Mississippi River, Lake Okeechobee in Florida, Eufaula, Clark's Hill, I think, was the other one, and Ozarks, and Lake of the Ozarks. So that right there is your 6. I think that's 6. Events. That's kind of people are talking about that's what's going to come out. And so now after that, we've got the other schedules to kind of come out. The Bass Open schedules, the Bass Elite Series, all these things need to come out here and play. You've got Hobie for kayak fishing. Hobie schedule is supposed to drop here the next few weeks after the Lake Dardanelle event this weekend. So, we're going to take a look at all that big picture. I'm going to do a video for me. I got a video coming up where I'm going to talk rating the organizations, the power rankings for these organizations in the fishing community, from the boater side and the kayak fishing side, in terms of, are they delivering? Are they delivering what anglers want? Are they delivering what fans like all of us want? Are they delivering payout-wise versus entry fees? Are they delivering on promoting the anglers, helping the anglers get, elevated in their own brand identity. That's a huge thing now. They didn't. I mean, remember, these organizations have to adapt. Okay, they've got to adapt to the new environment of individual anglers now having their own brand identities. Right? They didn't have that a decade ago. You basically were sponsored, and that was your identities, like who was sponsoring you, and that was kind of like. But now all these anglers, that the top anglers especially, a lot of them have their own products. A lot of them have their own businesses on the side. A lot of them have all fishing products. A lot of them are. It's not just a matter of sponsorship. They've got interests in their own identity and their own brand. Some of them are crossing over, like Mike Iaconelli. Okay, he may not be at the top of his game in fishing from the boating side, though he still fishes a lot of these series, a lot of these other events like the Opens and things like that. But he's certainly at the top of his game on the business side, right? Can't argue that. He's also kind of veered towards the kayak side, having a greater influence in the kayak side with bass. So, and Hobie. I think, in terms of Hobie events as well. So there's a lot of that going on in the fishing community now where I think we're going to see more of it. And we're also going to see a lot more non-endemic, to fishing community brands moving into the space. Okay. Because where's the real growth happening? The real growth is not happening at the top, mates. It's not. Okay. I mean, if you look at the changes that are coming down, this is like kind of the same thing. I mean, it's not nearly as dramatic changes because the audience is, it's not nearly as sponsored and commercialized, though it is very commercialized. It's almost like what's happened to NASCAR, in the last like 5 to 7 years. Like it's kind of like just a change in a lot of things. A lot less people in the stands the last 5 years compared to the last 20, right? For NASCAR. A lot of it's been expenses, ticket prices, all that stuff. So there's an evolutionary change happening in, a lot of the sports that a lot of us gravitate to. And a lot of it's predicated on commercialism. A lot of it's predicated on inflation, the economic costs of doing this, of putting these events on now. You've got, like, for example, you haven't heard very much about expos, right, anymore. You had small ICAST this year. You're still going to have probably the Bassmaster, and MLF had one, but in terms of everything else that's happening, less and less expos are happening. Less and less regional expos seem to be being scheduled and happening because a lot of the commercial side of the industry is able to reach the consumer in different ways in which they've never really been able to reach them before. And everybody has a phone and it's right there. And you've got them gravitating to sponsored ads, gravitating to all the different platforms. And they're reaching more people for their dollar than going and sending out someone and paying for a booth or sponsoring something. And so that's kind of like where we're all at now, in the industry. And so that's what has to happen. Let me double check on. Yeah, I think that's really it. For that. So the argument, what people are talking about is, is the MLF taking a step back? Sometimes you probably have to take a step back to take a step forward. 2023 is going to be a tough year in the country, mates. The year before an election always is in this country. I mean, we can't forget about that. But I just want to I very rarely, if ever, on my channel, interject politics. Because I think it has its place, and sports is an escape for us. And they really should not. That's why I hate ESPN. I'm gonna be honest with you, because they've somehow conflated the politicization of sport. Okay, and most people don't want to see that. Okay, we just want to enjoy our sports, and because sports are our escape from the reality of work and life, and and when you kind of conflate the two, it drives me, and I know it drives a lot of people that I know crazy, because we just want to watch the game, and we just want to watch people catch fish, and we just want to, take it in. But the fact of the matter is if you you have to understand that what we're hearing now about our economy via the media is complete shite. It's like not like it's all political engineering, for your midterm elections coming up and for next year's and for the next presidential election that's like 2 years away. Because the reality is they've changed the formulas now for which they tell us what the economy is really doing. If you go back and you use the same formulas that we used in the 80s and the 90s to determine our economic status, and this is how it translates into what's happening in the fishing community with all the costs are going up across the board, all of them. Baits are going to go up 14 to 20%. And if you're buying those Japanese baits, if you're buying those baits coming over, those brands, good luck, because they're all going to go up 20, 25% because the expenses associated with getting them here, right? Duties and all of that, customs and all of that, all of that, okay? I mean, that's what happens is if you use the formulas from the 80s and 90s, mates, our inflation rate is really like 16%, not 8%. It's really 16%. So that's impacting your insurance for your boat, your gas, where you're staying, the hotel charges. All of that stuff is way more expensive than it was 3 years ago. That's just a fact. Now people can try and hide it, but that's why you're seeing a lot of these tours make the decisions I think they're making, okay, in order to brace for what's coming. Because this is the worst economy I can remember since I was a kid, okay, in the late 70s to early 80s. This is the worst economy, okay? Regardless of what they tell us on TV, we know what we're feeling at home. We know when meat is $8.99 a pound, when ground beef is $4.99 a pound. It used to be $1.99 a pound and $2.99 a pound, okay? We know, we're not stupid, we know these things. And so keep that in mind when the more news comes out. Just keep that in mind. But that's a quick update on MLF. We'll see what happens with Bass next.